I'd almost died twice from weird infections. And our kids were both dyslexic, and we're trying to get them through dyslexic tutoring, which was extraordinarily expensive, to keep them in their
Um,
public school. And
mm.
everything had failed. And I had just gotten done.
Welcome to Mindset Momentum, the show. I'm Malori, your guide to unlocking your most authentic self through the fusion of personal development and brand strategy. With over a decade of experience in branding and a journey of personal discovery, I've uncovered the foundations of success, and they're all centered around mindset. Join me each week as we explore how cultivating an aligned personal brand empowers you to excel in every aspect of your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, creative professional, or simply someone seeking clarity in your personal identity, this podcast is tailored for you. Tune in for insightful interviews, truly inspiring stories, and actionable strategies that you can implement in your life to turn your dreams into reality. I'm thrilled you're here. Okay, let's dive in. My guest today, Jennifer, lives on the Gulf Coast of Alabama with her husband and 2 children. She's an internationally published author, a student of jiu-jitsu, homeschool mom, and a professional chauffeur to her teenagers. She's also a good friend of mine, and I'm so excited to have her on today. So Jennifer and I discussed a 24-hour walk, and I want to give you a little bit more info on what it is. So the Unbreakable 24-Hour Challenge, like all of the teachings developed by retired Navy SEAL Thom Shea, is an experiential-based learning event. It concentrates on both mental and physical aspects of human performance. It involves walking for 24 hours with a group of people while being led through a series of lessons delivered by Thom himself. Some consider this the most powerful lesson in Thom's book, Unbreakable, a Navy SEAL's Way of Life. And I would have to agree. And it's where I met Jennifer. This experience is the very definition of simple, not easy. You get the chance to have your mind, instead of your body, control your actions during times of discomfort to push past your self-imposed boundaries. So let's jump into the episode. Welcome to Mindset Momentum, the show. Jen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I met Jen at a 24-hour walk with Navy SEAL Thom Shea, and it was such an adventure.
Yes.
So what did the 24-hour walk do for you?
Oh, wow. I'm going to start that. When I first read Tom's book, I had just had a low moment in life where I was just done, and I couldn't really quit on anything because the only thing to quit on was like being married and a mom, because that was kind of what I had at the moment. And um, the background on that, long story short, it was 14 months with no reliable income. I'd almost died twice from weird infections. And we were dealing with our kids were both dyslexic, and we're trying to get them through dyslexic tutoring, which was extraordinarily expensive, to keep them in their
Um,
public school. And
mm,
everything had failed. And I had just gotten done. I think it was, I think it just gotten done with like cleaning the house out, because I had just come out of the hospital. So I was under house arrest by my infectious disease doctors. They're like, you have no immune system right now. So just don't go anywhere. And I'm like, fine. So I cleaned the house and I minimized it. I was like, this house is going to be the best run house possible. And I thought it would take me about a week, spring cleaning kind of thing. It took me 47 days. And so
wow.
27 trips to Goodwill. I was tossing stuff, and it was the last day and I was done. I had like spent 3 days on my closet, pulled everything out, painted it, like cleaned it out. And a storm came out of nowhere because we live on the Gulf Coast. So like that happens, it can form over your head. And dumped a lot of water and it started leaking in my closet. And I was
Mm.
like, and that I'm done. I think I turned the light off and just closed the closet and like backed away and was just overwhelmed and to the point where I just broke open. And I was like, if something doesn't break for us, I'm going to break in half. And that was kind of a prayer and like a plea. And about 10 minutes later, Josh, like he figured out what was going on. He came and like saved the day. Um, but then he was cleaning out this little box I'd asked him to clean out, and he like pulled out Tom's book and he goes, "Oh, cool! Like add this to your research," because I was doing research for a on the SEALs for a book I was writing. And I looked at the title and I was like, "Oh, that is not what I meant, God," because it's like because the
One of
title
those
was
moments.
really one of those moments, and I was like and I knew whatever was in that book was, like, the answer to my plea, like, that had I just done, like, 10 minutes later. It was, like, an instinctive, still somewhat, like, irritated by it. And I think it took me a couple hours to actually, like, be brave enough to open it because I was just like, "Oh, I wanna know. I don't wanna be unbreakable. I just want this to stop happening." And then I read once I started, I couldn't put it down, and I read till probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got to the walk where he does this 24-hour walk, and I was sitting there going, "Good for you, Tom. Good for you. You're crazy, but good for you." And I put it, I finally like put it down and fell asleep. And in the dream, I actually did the walk, and I started out
Oh,
doing it,
wow.
yeah, completely alone. Like I was on my own. I was in the desert of like Las Vegas area, Nevada, and I the sun went down and I got really frustrated. And I was just like, why did I try to do this on my own? Why was this? Well, this is the stupidest idea I've ever had. And a rattlesnake like jumped out in front of me and I jumped over it. And then my knee buckled and I hit my knee and like went down. I was like, this is so dumb. And then like Josh came out of nowhere, my husband, and he's like, let's just finish this together. And I was like, okay. And then like I limped through it. And when we finished, Tom was at the end and he said, well done, you two. And I was like, huh. And then I woke up and I was staring at my ceiling fan going, oh, I didn't actually do that. But in the dream, I had this sense that I could do anything after it. Like it was
Yeah.
like this resolve. And so I like reopened the book and was like, what was that? Because I went to sleep thinking, absolutely, this is the dumbest thing. Like, good for him, but like, I don't want to do that. To like, all right, how do I do this? Like, how do I
Yeah,
get there
like,
and do
this is
this?
possible for me then because it
Yeah.
it it probably felt really good even in the dream of, like, did that because those are very similar feelings to actually doing the walk,
Right.
which is where we met. That was
Yeah.
my second walk. That was your first walk, and it I mean, it's just the energy even just showing up with people that dare to do it is so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and
I was
also
really nervous too.
yeah, I think everyone is. It's why it like, those first 8 hours, it's so funny to see everyone kind of unfold, and it's just talk, 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 and you feel like, "Wow, this is it for the first, half," and then you kind of it dies down,
Hmm.
and the talking is like, "Wait a second, we're just gonna keep doing this for double the amount of time," and then it starts to get deeper and the layers peel off really quickly. You had an injury that you were working through, and I remember at one point, it's kind of like your dream, you were like, I'm gonna finish this even if I have to crawl."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and in the walk, I mean, I'd only been, I think it was the next day after that dream that I had that my friend called me because like we were pretty close to broke. Like, I mean, like if we were like we were broke. And, so my friend called me and she says, I just got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I know you've had it for a long time. Would you be my swim buddy if I pay for your gym membership and all the equipment needed? And I was like, hell yes. And so like the next like Monday morning, I had like the tools because I was kind of like, how would I get my body able to do something like that? Because I really didn't work out. I was really great with nutrition because I controlled my RA. I've had RA since I was 10. So I'm 41 now. So 30 years. And I control it naturally through supplements and my diet. And I was never very good at exercise because, like the teenage years, I went to Universal Studios and got carted around, with the old people because I couldn't walk like that. It just my knees would swell so bad. So I'm like, I don't have those years of abundant energy and strength like everybody else talks about. I was like, I felt crippled most of the time in my teenage years. And so but after reading Tom's book, I was like, what do I need to do to be able to do something like that? How could I get there? And swimming kind of came to mind. And then it was like the next day I had like the answer to that. And I'm like, gosh, this is so cool. And so I started swimming. I'd only been swimming for 6 months, like barely any time. And so when
Yeah.
we started to go on the walk, and when we got there, so like halfway through, my knees were killing me. Like, I mean, I had very little cartilage left. And so, yeah, I pulled on the knee brace thinking this will make it easier. Like, Tom was just like zeroed in on my knee brace. And I'm like, "Ah, dang it."
Yeah.
you know?
We're like
Yeah.
eating a snack and he's like, you want to talk about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I just felt like I needed a little extra support. And it wasn't that I was anywhere near quitting. It was just something I knew was going to happen. I wasn't sure when it would happen, but I knew it would. And I was very prepared for it, and Tom was like, your body language is telling me that you're struggling here, but I'm like, no, I'm not. Like mentally I wasn't. I was used to the pain, honestly. Like it was just there, but I was like, and then the darkness was the hardest part for me. Like I think it was around 10 p.m., which I'm a night owl. So this kind of surprised me a little bit. But around 10, I was like, I really want my bed. I really want my bed. And I wanted coffee. I wanted a hot shower. I wanted to be done. And I was looking and going, are we even halfway through yet?
Probably not.
No, there was so I like the idea, and I think I thought it was later, like around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning that we're still walking. And I finally like looked at my watch, and like the time that it said, I just remember going, "Oh, I wish I hadn't even seen that," because it was demonstrating towards
Yeah.
my mindset, and so I had to struggle, and I think I kind of let my mind wander to what it would feel like. 'Cause I could almost feel the covers, like feel it across my body as I was struggling with wanting to quit. And so I realized, and Tom's voice earlier that day was like, just make sure. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, when these things happen, just remind yourself you're not quitting, like that. And so that's what I did. It's like I let all of that desire come towards my head and my mind, and I felt it and felt the desire for the hot shower and how great that would feel like at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning when we're done.
Mhm.
And it was
That's
just,
one way to do it. Yeah.
yeah.
Personally, I can't even think about that. I'm like, I'm gonna do this first. I'm gonna finish it. And then I'll dive into that world of comfortable goodness. And yeah, it's actually pushed me to where I thought for a moment there I wasn't allowed to find comfort, period. But
Mhm,
really it's like, no, when you get to be cozy, you get to indulge in that and like really be present and grateful for it. And then when you have to be uncomfortable, just get through it because you committed to this thing and you just get to the end. You just do it now. And do
mhm.
you do that in your life today now?
Yeah, definitely. I do sometimes think maybe it's just the way that I write because I see things in my mind like a movie and then I kind of record it down. And so that's kind of how I would describe what it was like because the images and the sensations of being in bed or hot shower, hot coffee came to me before my thought process did. So it was like I was there and I was having to mentally say, okay, yes, this would be great, but not till tomorrow. Like, so I was having to direct myself and my thoughts, and I just kind of let them come to me because I dealt with them as they came. And that works pretty well. But I think that's probably more a commentary on how I like write and use my imagination, and how stuff
Yeah.
like that happens. Because it was a really powerful moment because yeah, those were very tempting things to be like, I've learned a lot, from this walk. I've definitely learned a lot at that point. Um, but I was like, I'm gonna finish this thing, hell or high water and I was so swollen by that time too, like every joint
Yeah.
was painful, and I'm like, with arthritis, once you get started moving, it's okay, but that initial first part of every movement that you get, like it's just you have to push fluid out of your joints, as you're moving, and it's like, oh. And so then I think towards the end of the walk, I could barely stand on my feet, like my feet were covered in tiny little blisters.
Yes, I do remember that. That was a visual where I was like, wow, this is different for everybody.
Yeah.
And had no idea that that's what your feet could have looked like because you did not complain about it. You were like, "I mean, my feet hurt," but and then you took your shoes off, and I was like, "You badass woman."
Yeah.
You're like,
Uh,
"Yeah, okay, now give me the Dunkin' Donut and the coffee that
yeah.
Stacey brought for us." That was great. I earned it,
Yeah.
right?
Right? Totally. Yeah, what was really hard was the 3 weeks afterwards, it did not stop. So for 3 weeks afterwards, I was still that swollen and I couldn't work out. So I had to really push because my RA really affected my recovery the most. So I
Mhm.
can do really big things like the walk, but it's gonna make me pay for it later. So, I pick those battles pretty consistently, because I don't let it stop me either. I'm in better shape now than especially right after that, like, than I ever was before. I have to really work on my agility, and that's, like, my thing that I've been working on mostly right now. Um, so I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a little over a year now. I'm a 3-tag white belt. So jiu-jitsu leverages joints, leverages everything instead of like, if you're using your strength to do something, you're doing it wrong. Like,
Mm.
it's not, it's a cardiovascular workout, but it's not a strength building workout. So it's real
Wow.
interesting that way. And so that's why it works for the little guy and it works for a woman going against a man. To,
Oh, yeah,
to
like, you get to throw your husband around on the mat, don't you?
they do.
Your whole family goes. I don't know if you're all there at the same time or what, but I know that it's been really cool to see your son and your daughter out there against each
Yes.
other, and then you and your husband. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, I wanted to get my son into jujitsu years before we did, and it was always colliding with baseball schedules. I had this instinct that my son would be very good at it and he would really like it. I finally like won that battle, and I had to take my son, and my son's just like, "Mom, I really don't want to do this." I'm like, "I just want you to give it one shot. Just come with me, like one shot. We're gonna still watch." And Pat, the instructor, Pat, totally was like crazy cool uncle guy, and he still was absolutely unsure if he really wanted to start. And I was like, well, let's just try one class. Let's get you on the mat. He's like, Mom, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of the point, Landon. You
Yeah.
know? And he,
Gotta learn.
you got to learn, right? You have to train. And he got out of the car when we got there and he immediately tried to jump back in the car. He's like, I don't think I can do this well. And I was like, okay, all you have to do is one step in front of the other, just like we learned on the walk. Like, it's just one foot in front of the other. Just walk through the door and then do whatever Pat tells you to do. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you have to focus on. And he says, "Okay, I can do that." And so, like, he got out there, and I noticed that when he took a step, his foot was trembling. Like his whole body was trembling. And it took him maybe 10 seconds once he got on there that he turned around and gave me like this big grin. He's like, "Okay, this is cool." I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, it is." Yeah.
I went through that as a child too, like going to my dance tryouts for middle school. Like I was shaking, so nervous. I ran to the car and my mom was like dragging me back in. She's like, "You can do it." And I mean, I was a competitive dancer for over 9 years. So like it's that thing that you're shaking, trembling, terrified of. That's usually like, wow, this is what I was meant to do.
Right. Exactly. And Landon is, I think he's on his third or fourth belt now. So he's leveled up 4 times belt color, another. And he was doing it about 6 months before we started. And I knew that would happen because I really wanted to, but I kind of was strategic about how I did this with my family. I got my son there first, and I told my husband, I was like, "You're in charge of taking him." So it took Josh a
Since
matter
you're
of
there. Yeah.
once you're there. Pat was, of course, would just sit there and talk, after class. And he's like, "All right." I think it took us like 3 months. Josh was like figuring out our budget. Jiu-jitsu is definitely expensive, but this is well worth it. And I said, "Yeah, it is." And so, like, we started right before Christmas. I think it was like a Christmas gift to ourselves. The first couple months, it was really like, I feel so stupid when I walk in. And it's like playing chess with your body, So I don't know. It's often described as playing chess, and you have to feel everything in your body, like what your opponent is doing, and you have to remember how to counter and defend. And it's a lot to take in at once, which really stretches my mental ability as well as my physical agility. And it's a challenge, is for sure. But I also felt like for our family, my husband was shot in an armed robbery well before we met Tom. And, that came out of nowhere. It was daylight. It was a nice area. It was the stupidest thing ever. And it really rocked our world as far as violence can happen at any moment from anybody at any time. And, like a lot of people say that, I'm like, but I lived it. I understood it in a very unique way. I really always wanted to make sure my kids had an ability to defend themselves.
The shooting with your husband, he was shot in the foot.
So he worked at a compounding pharmacy and he was outside and these guys tried to rob him, take his card, wallet, and he fought with them and the guy pulled back and was like, "You're dead now." And he shot, but I think this is like probably the only positive thing Hollywood's ever contributed to society. But the guy shot like this and at a downward angle. So it's real popular to see him got in like gangster movies, like, you'll see them do that, and it's like, but you can't aim for anything when you do that, and so the bullet hit the concrete first and then ricocheted and broke apart and hit his foot and his ankle, and so
Mm.
the shrapnel in his ankle is still there because they can't remove it without possibly, severing the nerve to his foot, so he wouldn't be able to walk again. If they did, they're like, "We're just gonna leave it." That was not the man's intention for sure, and it scared him because Josh just kinda stood there, was just like, "You shot me." And the guy, like, jumped in the car and, like, took off. That could have gone completely other way, and so, we're more as a family of peop we're more aware of those threats, and I felt really impressed that the kids needed this growing up and, like, the way that our culture and our just country was changing, that this was just a really valuable skill set to teach. Even if it's really more of a hobby and fun right now, over long term, I'm like, "No, there's purpose here too," and it was interesting because it was a couple months ago, this we had my daughter and I were trying to fill up my car with gas, and this guy just came out of nowhere. He was probably high, but he was like, "I wanna fight somebody." And he was going up to every person, running up to people trying to fight them, and he targeted me. And Lila was like she was the first one to see it. She's 12, and she's like, "Mom, mom," and then I jumped back in the car and locked the door, and as soon as I did, like, I was out of his sight. But I was also looking at him going, "I don't know if you have a weapon, but I know I could take you." Like, so I was, like, calculating these things going, "I don't really want to," it's like the best form of action was to get back in the car and use the car as a shield. But Lila was, like, all about like, she was clocking him, and I'm like, "This is the whole point of having the skill set is to teach situational awareness, is to teach self-defense, is to have the skills if you need them, and to avoid them." Like, I actually
Yeah.
saw this guy coming way, fast enough to be able to defend and, jump in. And a lot of people just don't have that, and so I'm like, "Ah, I just."
Yeah. It's so incredible to hear that your 12-year-old daughter is the first one that saw it coming, and she just has that situational awareness.
Yeah,
She's like, "Hey, this is happening," and actually acted on it instead of freezing up or not saying anything. So
right.
that's incredible.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just I was so grateful, and of course, I called Pat, and I was like, "This is what just happened." He's like, "You handled that perfectly." That's kind of the whole point of what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu did was, it just gives you that fighting chance. And it is a chance, but it's not a guarantee, but, that's why we did it, and so I love going with my husband, though. I really also love it when other women come because I'm like, "Yes." Somebody that's more my body type and it's not so heavy, and there's a camaraderie with the women that come. All the women that have come so far have been attached. So they're part of a couple. But,
Hey,
and I
power couple.
right, I get it. I don't wanna roll around with a bunch of sweaty dudes. You gotta kind of be okay with being uncomfortable. It's a really fun, unique group of people because we've all experienced the same thing of going through the door and putting on the white belt was probably one of the hardest things you'll do because it's nerve-wracking. You're like, "I'm gonna go let somebody beat me up."
Mm,
Yeah, but, that's the hardest belt to get is the white belt. It's just to start, so
just starting, you're right. Because once you start, even though there's a learning curve to some degree, and it's just this unknown. You're like, "I'm
mhm,
signing up for jujitsu, but I don't know it yet." And just like with anything, if you don't know it, you can't just be like, "Well, I'm not good at it, so I'm not gonna do it." Like, that's the point of starting. And then
right,
you persist, you get through it, you learn. Some people call it failing, like, "Oh, I failed." You can look at it as a failure and you could quit, sure, but I feel like failure has been slowly being removed out of my vocabulary because it's like, okay, I learned from that. So I'm just
Yes.
like, man, what did I learn? Oh, that sucked, but what did I learn? I'm not good at that yet. What do I need to learn to get better? And just starting,
Yeah.
and that's how you get better.
I would actually take that a step farther. When my kids were in probably first grade, second grade, or first grade kindergarten, because they're just a year apart. I flipped it on them. And when the first time I did this, my daughter burst into tears. And my son was just like, I can't believe you would ask me that question, mom. Like total attitude about this. But I straight up looked at them at the end of the day when I picked them up from carpool and I said, what'd you fail at today?
Mhm.
And like they flipped out. And I had to let them have their emotional outbreak burst and let the tears fall. And I just waited in the car. We're just driving home and I waited and Lila finally goes, why would you ask me that question, mom? Why would you want me to fail? And I said, well, if you failed at something at school, it means you tried something new. And
That's
she was
true.
like, oh. And I said, so every day I want to hear what you failed at because you guys do a lot during your day and you're here to learn, which means you don't know stuff. So you should be failing every day.
That's
And
a good way to look at it.
she was like, whoa, I stopped asking, how was your day? What happened? Anything like that. And it was fun because the kids would get in the car and they're like, guess what? I failed at, mom. And I'm like, okay,
Oh, wow.
what did you fail at? And I think one of it was like they had a new kid in school and she was an actual like little person. And so like they're like all these little people around, and then there's a little person that's even smaller than all of them. And she was, a little uncomfortable, I think. And Lila was like, I tried to make her my friend, but she wasn't willing to talk yet. And I was like, okay. And she goes, so I'll try again tomorrow. Like, perfect. This is the whole
Yeah.
point of changing the dialogue of how to be, in relationship with failure and being like,
Yes.
because success comes through failure. And if you are successful and you haven't failed at something, I guess you could say my parenting style, these are my parenting goals. I want my children to know how to defend themselves. I want my children to know how to learn anything that they set their mindset to. And I want them to have super discipline, like, and focus and that understand how to be that way, to be disciplined with their bodies and their minds and what they eat, all of it. And I consider myself that if I succeed, that if they become, adults and they know those three things, three or four, whatever that was, um, I've succeeded. I see a lot of parents spending a lot of time taking their kids to about 50 different activities. They're in soccer, they're in ballet, they're in jiu-jitsu, they're in chess club, they're in robotics, they're in, art classes and choir
Right.
so many activities. And I'm like, I told my kids they could have one and that I would cart them around and do all of those things with just one activity each. And they got to pick. And then everything else kind of is they get to lead what they're wanting to do. But I'm not necessarily going to be committing my time to that. And I told my husband when he asked me about it, I said, well, I get them for 18 years to teach them these incredibly big things of how to learn, especially being dyslexic, how to overcome their mindset and how to overcome I wouldn't call them limitations, but they're definitely obstacles. And how to focus themselves, like how to discipline themselves to accomplish their own goals in life instead, and they get to decide how they're going to spend the next 70 to 80 years of what they want to pursue. I only have this small window of time. So I don't want to jam
Mhm.
pack it with every activity known to man. I don't need to introduce them to everything either.
If they wanna pick up the fiddle, they can be a 52-year-old man and be like, "I'm gonna start this." Whatever
Yeah.
comes later, but
Right.
at least they'll have that foundation of, like, "I know how to actually do this and go for it because you taught them
Yeah.
that."
Yes. Our children learn from us and they learn from what we do. They don't learn from what we
Yes.
say. And that's something that I think every parent agrees with. But I'm not sure people really understand how much your children actually see you do. Like, they see
They
you
see you do things. Yes.
right, and they hear your excuses, and, like, they'll probably tell you, "Yeah, okay, great, I understand," but then and I'm just getting into my teenage years, so I could be a little arrogant about this, but this is what I have seen in observing parents and teenagers is that the less trustworthy you are in your word when you give it, the more your teenagers rebel.
Yep,
and I'm like,
because
and
they
that,
feel like they have some, "Ooh, like, I can push here, I can say I'm gonna do that," and then not do it until they yell at me or
well, and I think
something
it's
like that.
more, I feel like, and I've seen this with my kids. If my kids see me give an excuse and follow the excuse instead of honoring what I said I was going to do the next week, they're disrespectful instantly. And I'm like, oh, because really what it is that they're like, well, if you can give an excuse for why you're not doing what you said you're supposed to be doing, why do I have to do what you tell me to do? Or why do I have to honor my own word, of my responsibilities? I realize that any inconsistencies that I have with my word and my actions, my kids instantly see it. And then that leads them to thinking that that's okay as well to have those inconsistencies or to use excuses as to why they didn't get their schoolwork done or why they didn't get the trash taken out, um, and like obviously their kids are going to screw it up a lot of times, but like it's interesting how it increases tenfold if I'm not honoring my word to myself. And it's just something I've noticed. And, and so as we were on that walk, I guess it was about 5 years ago. And so my kids have grown up with us doing these 21-day challenges, with us having done these 24-hour walk and fear challenges as well. And
So
I think that's probably
let's dive into what a 21-day challenge is.
yes. So a 21-day challenge, the way that I explain it to people is that you pick 3 things, at least for your first 21-day challenge, just pick 3 very simple things that you can do on your worst day. I've led a couple of challenges for my friends, and the women, I'm like, think about it as I've started my period. I got rained on. It's storming outside. The kid forgot his lunch at school. This happened. This happened. Everything fell apart. I had a fight with my husband and this. What can you still honor your word to in that on that day? And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm like, yes, because in a 21-day period, that's gonna happen.
That's a good way to put it. You're right. In that span of 3 weeks, someday you're just gonna feel like this is a shit show.
Yeah.
But like you said, very simple. So for me, it's usually like drink X amount of water,
Mhm.
right? So is that one of your base ones as well?
I do encourage that for people. I actually typically, ones that I'm trying, ones I've led for people, I'm like something physical. So it has to be. There's always something physical, and then something intellectual because people are always like, I don't want to. I never have enough time to read books or wanting to do this. I'm like, okay, so 10 minutes or 10 pages a day or, however, whatever you're willing to commit to. And then I'm not gonna get people that are like, I have no idea what I would do physically. I'll go for a walk. And I was like, oh, for your first 21 days, are you sure you want to do that? Are you committed to doing that at midnight? Are you committed to doing that in a storm? Because that's you can't use that as an
The
excuse.
reality. Right.
Yeah. And because are you comfortable going for a walk in your neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night because you've had a crap day and you come home and you're like, oh God, I forgot, or I haven't quite, gotten there yet. Because it will happen.
Yes.
And so, I'm like, but I kind of like start with 10 sit-ups, start with 10 squats, 10 push-ups. And I'm like, with women, I'm like, a push-up is still a push-up if it's against the wall or if it's on your knees. Like it's
Mhm.
still there. If you need your kids to sit on your feet by starting with 5 sit-ups, just start. And I'm sensitive with women who've had children, I'm like doing 10 sit-ups can be very daunting sometimes to them. And I'm like, do it with your child, like right there. They'll encourage you and it's an incredible builder for your relationship with them. And,
Yes,
it's
and it's, again, one of those things that they're gonna see you doing,
mhm,
and they'll probably what I've seen with my kids is, like, if I do something that's just out of the norm or it's, like, this new thing or I'm getting uncomfortable doing something, they're excited. They're like,
yeah,
"Oh, I'll do it. Well, what are you doing? What can I do to" yeah, let give me something new.
yeah. The first I
Yeah,
so the other thing I also encourage is do it with a group or do it with your family. So, like, do it with your kids so that you're
I
reminding
agree.
yourself to do it at the same time you're reminding your children to do it. Because we're really good at reminding our kids to do something before, we remind ourselves. And definitely don't do it alone because it's just in isolation, it just doesn't work to start doing hard things. And the simpler the thing, it's not hard to do these 3 little things. It's hard to do it every day. And
Yes,
so
those main excuses come up. I forgot. This is stupid. I'm not
painful.
supported. Yeah, this
Yeah,
sucks.
it's hurt.
Yeah,
Yeah. Why am I doing this again? Because you said you would. That's
exactly.
it. And because everyone says I should be working out more, I should go to the gym more. Well, you don't need a gym. You need to just honor yourself. Get on your floor, on your yoga mat, and do them. Like it's not
Mm,
that it's you don't have to go to beast mode. You're not supposed to go from 0 to 100 in a day.
like,
You
you
start slow.
can and do yeah, exactly. Like, if you are using the excuse of, "Well, I can't work out yet because I don't have enough money to go to a gym," or I something about going somewhere else. Like, you have a body weight, your couch, like, there are
Yeah,
plethora of free videos on YouTube. You can go look up right now, body weight
absolutely.
exercise, like beginner level, whatever you want to do, it's available right there for you. So there really is no good excuse to
Right.
not figure out how to make it work and be committed to that.
Really isn't. And once you realize that the hard part is in the commitment, is like it starts to change how your brain works. I don't remember there's a guy on Instagram that's always talking about this. That every time you honor your word to that, every time you honor the commitment, you change your brain chemistry just a little bit at a time. And so that it becomes easier and easier to be committed over time. And
Mm,
where what people don't always catch is that being not committed in those little things during your day makes you a more committed parent. It makes you a more committed partner with your spouse. It makes you a more committed friend. It makes you more reliable and you now can count on yourself because until you
exactly.
until you learn to conquer your word on that, like conquer your excuses, um, you are you're lying to yourself consistently by saying this is a priority, but then you don't
Yep.
make it the priority, and then you're consistently in a cycle that then you can't even trust yourself, and you know that because you're like, well, if I commit to that, I'm probably not going to do that. Like you can feel it.
I love that we're talking about this conversation. Like, when you honor your word consistently and you actually do it and you always follow through and you're like, "Shit, like I have to get up and do 10 push-ups and sit-ups and squats," and
Yeah,
it's 11:45 and you were just about to fall asleep. If you just get up and do it, and whatever you commit to and you follow through and honor your word, you also learn confidence because
mhm,
your body and your mind start believing like, "Whoa, she's gonna go do this race. She's gonna do that. She's gonna start waking up at 4:30 and go to the gym at 5. Shit,
yeah,
we have been doing that for 6 months. Okay, that's just who we are now." Like,
yeah,
you build confidence, and just like we were talking about before, your kids see that,
mhm.
and even if they don't see it now, they're gonna look back and be like, "Wow, mom or dad, they would say they do something, and then they do it." Like, they would go do things with me, they would commit to things in their own life, and then maybe they'll realize like, "Whoa, parents got up and worked out before we even woke up for 10 years. I had no idea." And then they're going to have that person to reflect back on. They're probably not going to high five you right now for doing that, but eventually they will. So just being
Mind you,
committed to that. Yeah. Yeah. That's
mine
good.
do. I definitely do. But I can't for all people or in the unbreakable community who do that. But mine do. And I did 21-day challenges with them really young. So like as soon I think I did Tom's very first challenge very successfully. I didn't have to start over. Um, and I didn't
Wow.
include them. It was just me and my husband. We were doing that together and we did that. And then the second one, my kids watched me and I think they were doing it with me. And they had to like make their bed every morning, brush their teeth, and I think they had to read for 5 minutes, or maybe 10. Something like that. And being dyslexic, reading was kind of a hard thing, which they could do it together or we could read to them, but like they had to like pick a book that they wanted to read and that was the safe. Then I think I started adding in like 5 push-ups for them, 5 sit-ups. They were doing them in the gym at
Mhm.
the school anyway, because they were in school till about third grade. But they were learning with us. And, my son was like, why am I doing this again? Like, well, you're going to learn this. Like I dragged them through a few. So Lila, I was watching her going, I wonder what this kid's going to do, like with this discipline that she's learning and very much like understanding what we're trying to teach her. And so now she's about to turn 13 and she's in ballet, she's a classical ballerina. And that discipline has served her so well. Like she does her own 21-day challenges now. She is learning a foreign language. She wants to learn Russian, of course, because there's the history of the ballet in Russia. But she also just thinks it's the prettiest language that she hears. And I'm like, this is
Right.
hilarious. Watching her, she taught herself how to bend wire to make jewelry so that she can pay for her point shoes because they're $150 a pop, and she needs like three every 3 months. Like,
Wow.
ballet is like ridiculous,
She's
and she
committed. She
she's
sees what
committed.
this means on a deeper level. I think you're right. She really comprehends the concept, not only seeing you do it, but like, oh, I could do that too. And she's
Mhm.
applying herself. She started, right?
Right, she completely
Wow.
started. And so she does jujitsu when she can, when ballet is not interfering. And so like, and to answer your question before, like we are actually there as a family doing it together from time to time, and then we all have our separate classes. But yeah, Lila's ballet, she's definitely on her path to doing professional ballet. That's her stated goal. It's been that way for the last 3 years, and her teachers are all retired professors, not professors, are retired ballerinas. And she like at the summertime, ballet takes a break, and it drives her crazy. She's like, I just don't want to lose my skill, and I'm going to diminish, because we're not in session. And I'm like, well, 21 day it, baby. And she's like,
Yeah.
it's
What can we do about that?
right. And so like last year, that's what she did. She wrote all of her things down, and so she tested herself with how many sit ups she could do in a row, how many pull ups she could do in a row, how many push ups she could do. She did all the different ballet, exercises that she could do, and she's like, "All right, this is where I'm at, so I'm gonna make sure I never get below this line." And so she would push herself doing 21 days at a time during the summer. And of course, she started and she's completely not lost anything. She's like, "Let's go."
Yeah. That's incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
How do you go about writing your books? Because I know you've published Time to Serve, and that was based off kind of a Navy SEAL character and story, correct?
Sort of, yeah. Actually, the way that I started that was not quite the Navy SEAL, but the SEAL part came in later. It was a book actually about loss and grief. The overview is that it's told through a Navy SEAL's perspective, that he falls in love with this woman who's lost everything and has to overcome and come back from it and find herself that way. And so it's completely told through his perspective, which is not very often found in romance. He's going back and forth between deployments and coming home and adventures and just watching this woman and going, geez, the strength that it takes to live through that and to continue on. And then she's come in to train with another Navy SEAL because she's overcoming PTSD from her accident. And that's kind of their worlds just kind of collide that way. And the main point was to create a book that was worthy of reading, but got you to that one scene of this is what it's like for someone who's going through loss and grief, and that it's very isolating for them because it makes other people uncomfortable to sit with it, so they ignore it. And it forces that person into isolation to grieve this horrible thing alone. And then they're not even allowed to talk about it because it makes you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to highlight that from what I witnessed in my friend. And since then, I've had a couple of other friends pass and another friend's child pass. And it's just like that has been a book that has oddly found its way into the hands of the people who needed it. And they've come out, I've gotten responses of like, that was so accurate, and then one of my friends died and her father had read my book and he came up to me, he goes, Evie is getting me through her funeral today. And I was like,
Wow, what an impact. I
yeah,
just can't imagine.
I really
Well, I'm
couldn't
so glad
either.
you wrote this book when you did
Yeah,
all of those things that you
yeah,
thought maybe, I don't know why this is happening. Like you started, you got over that fear, and now you've helped people in
yeah.
ways you probably couldn't have imagined.
Mm-mm. So, yeah, I mean, I still get, like, tongue-tied. I'm like, "I don't even know what to do with that." Like, for them,
Yeah.
Evie's this real person, this real character that understands them, and I'm like, "Wow," and then the SEAL character, I spent 3 years researching that just to be able to figure out how to make him believable, and somebody that people wanted to read because his perspective is most people's perspective, it's on the outside, it's on the fringe, and so but it's also fun, like, the dialogue that I came up with and was just kind of playing with.
So how
Yeah.
did you get into that character? How did you said you studied the SEALs for 3 years. What was it
Mhm.
like for you writing out, like, all of the different aspects and characteristics to create the identity?
Uh, a great question. At the beginning, I definitely would go to Pinterest and try to find, like, pictures of what reminded me of my character or what I wanted him to be.
Mhm.
I would I would definitely and I had, like, my screens, my backgrounds, on my screens, or it's all these, like, collage of pictures of the book that if you know the book, you're like, "Oh, da, 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 da," So, wherever you can use real life stuff is what you need because, the rule is write what you know, and I'm such a going I don't think I wrote anything that I knew into that book, other than
So,
just my
just the
perspective.
visual so that visual elements really helped you personify the character you were
Definitely.
picturing.
Definitely, and not necessarily, like, his features. I'm actually really specific. I don't really describe features of the characters, and if I do, I'm very vague about it, and there's a reason is that psychologically speaking, if I'm not detailed on it, your brain will fill in whatever you find attractive, and it there's that reader to the character even more.
So you have 3 books coming out. Tell us a little bit about them. What's the title and where can we find them? When are they coming out?
So, book 1 is A Time to Serve. You can find that on Amazon, and so you can contact me, and I can get you a book, and so I have autographed copies. It's just digital right now, because there aren't I gotta reprint if there's a need, for it right now, which most people are digitally minded. And then, book 2 is coming out. I haven't finished it, so my goal is to have all 3 of these books that I have in various stages, done by the end of the year, and next year they'll be published. So book 2 is coming, then I have a Spartan history book. So it's a time travel series that I'm starting, and it's about a female military woman who can travel through time, and she accidentally lands in ancient Sparta in 21st century military garb, and like
Oh,
just
that's gonna be fun.
yeah, I think it might be my favorite so far that I've written because it's just there's so much fun there to be had, and everything I've learned about the seals I've brought to bear, against that because like ancient Sparta, they're so similar in culture, and
Yes.
so so that's been fun, and then I have a fantasy book that I just finished. It's a werewolf, dragons, and, fae kind of, magical world that was really fun to write and completely not my typical genre, but just I had a wild hair one day
What's
and
the title of the last 2? Have you named them?
nope, I haven't
No?
named them yet.
I
So
named
one's
them.
finished. I know, I can't quite finish. The one's out for critique right now. One's almost finished, and then, I'll have that. So you'll have to, like, start following me to be able to, like, come out knowing when everything's coming.
This
But,
is so exciting.
yeah, yeah,
You're so
I love
versatile.
writing.
I love that.
Yeah. So, it's been
Awesome.
weird writing 3 books at once in different concepts. But even so, like, all of my characters are very strong, disciplined, focused characters, and, like, which always helped me in my time because, like, what I'm trying to do in my life, and then I put them into my characters, and sometimes, like, my characters teach me something, and I'm like, "Huh," like, I'll write it, and then I'm like, "That's cool. I need to think about that for a
That's
longer."
beautiful. We will definitely be looking forward to your new books coming out. And everyone, make sure you're following Jen so you can see the journey and be ready to get them when they're released.